today to have with us Prerana Choudhury. Welcome to Anazari and that web.
Thank you.
I will just ask you, House of Noorie actually ki hoy?
I was interested in textiles. I have grown up seeing Aita weave amazing clothes in her, courtyard. So the loom was always a very familiar presence for me. And so I never objectively looked at textile as something that I could pursue in terms of a passion, hobby, business, career, whatever you say. But I think over the years, more I think majorly maybe because I was studying arts and aesthetics in JNU, য'ত মানে কলাতত্ত্ব পঢ়াৰ কাৰণে কিছুমান perspectives মানে আহিবলৈ ধৰিলে। বস্তু এটা মানে এটা কালচাৰেল অবজেক্টক কেনেকৈ অবজেক্টিভলি পঢ়িব পাৰি, এস্থেটিক বস্তুটো কেনেকৈ আমি থিয়ৰিটাইজ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। So all these things started to, create conversations inside my head about how I could study a piece of cloth that was so common in Assamese household as like a cultural object. So Tetiapura, I think the inclination started. And over, it just kind of kept growing like an amoeba, like I told you. So it kept on growing till a point when I realized that if I don't do something now, it's never going to happen. So by 2019, I had quit my job in the corporate publishing house, and I'm like, I have to move out now. I have to go and look at the villages of Assam. I want to get the answers for all the curiosities I have. কি হৈ আছে নো হ্যান্ডলুম হসাকে মৰি গৈছে নেকি সৰু হাল যে নোহোৱা হৈছে বুলি কৈছে এটো হসা নেকি so you hear multiple things from people, right? But unless and until you go to the field, you don't know for a fact ki hetu hosa ne misa. So moi jaboi lagibo boli moi decide korilu, and I thought, let me give myself a year or two. It's okay if I don't have a job till then. I tried to convince my parents. So I just set out for the villages of Assam in Lower Assam because my Uttar Guwahati hoy, so Murkane Lower Assam is more accessible. And I started traveling, and then of course, gradually I began to learn things. I started putting two and two together. Khorua halor bikhoy more fascination to bahut besi. Dangor commercial hal to all of beleg hoy. But ঘৰুৱা হালত যেনেকে মানুহ এগৰাকীয়ে ভাত ৰান্ধি আছে, কেঁচুৱা খুৱাই আছে, ইনলজক চাই আছে, তাৰ মাজতে অকমান সময় পাইছে হালত বহি অকমান আধা ঘন্টামান কাম কৰি ললে। So এনেকে যে কামবোৰ হয়, I was very fascinated by that. It is part of everyday life and routine. It was not like তুমি 9 to 5 at a commercial center গৈ কাম কৰি আছা, cut off from your everyday life. So I was very fascinated by that. So I started exploring it, and that is where I think House of Noorie was born. That was the main motivation. Mane horu halor logot amar home based weavers e jeneke everyday life at kapur banai nijor karone, nijor neighborhoodor karone, without knowing anything about the kind of value they are creating for Assamese culture. They're absolutely oblivious about it. Teuluke nije najane je teulukor contribution to kiman dangor, and that it has to be preserved. They are not aware of it. They're doing it because they have learned it, and they just continue doing it as a part of life. That is what really fascinated me. So I think that's the seed of inspiration.
Yeah. How do you respect that cultural aspect of this weaver also?
That's actually a very interesting question, and it kind of addresses all the complexities of this sector, Like generally, to me, Wikipedia, if you do a normal Google search about the craft sector in general, India, so the tag words that will come are mostly related to calling craft as a disorganized sector. It is one very renowned journalist or a scholar, I forget his name. He said, why are we calling it disorganized? It is differently organized. Like randomly and arbitrarily give a name to a sector which is so large. Or at a region, there multiple communities. Each community again has their own ethics and way of life, which influences the weaving practice. So if you have a set model, weaving has to be like this, weavers have to respond like this, weavers have to create this many pieces. You can't, it's not homogeneous. This whole tendency of homogeneity is very dangerous, not just in craft and weaving per se, in everything, in identity, in fashion, in religious, identities of all kinds, in fact. So you can't be homogeneous. Every community, every village, in fact, Assam, like the Lower Assam go, there is a distinctive, the way communities are spread between Upper Assam and Lower Assam. Like say the missing community only lives in Upper Assam. Lower Assam, again, we have a different set of communities. So there again, like say you go to a particular village in Lower Assam, তাৰ মাজতো তোমাৰ প্ৰত্যেক সুবাত হয়তো অকনমান weaving কিছুমান বেলেগ বেলেগ practice থাকিব পাৰে, not just in terms of how the weavers are choosing to weave, which is part of their daily life, but also in the kind of motifs they kori asu. I don't think I'm armed with enough knowledge to say something like a foolproof mane eneka hoy bostuto gotike this is a solution. I don't have that. What I can say are my observations and experience from whatever travels I have done in Assam. I think commercialization is definitely important. Scaling up is also important, but how you balance that by respecting the flow and pace of the community, it's very important. Like there are times, like say for instance, because I'm also working a little bit in Kutch and Rajasthan, because মই সৰুৰে পৰা এই দুটা ৰিজনৰ প্ৰতি কিয় এটা ফ্যাসিনেশন আছে মই নাজানো, maybe textbook or geography textbook পঢ়ি and seeing all the graph pictures in CBSE books, I was just like always fascinated. So I was like যদি মই textile কাম কৰো, I have to interact with these two regions. So that was my motivation. But তাতে যেনেকে শিপিনী সকলে behave কৰে, তেওঁলোকে যেনেকে টাইমলাইন মেইনটেইন কৰে, আমাৰ অসমত completely different. Every region, Kutch is different from Rajasthan. Rajasthan is again very different from Assam. Assam or eta gaor pra antu gaor loi aru difference. So I think what is really important is to understand that multiple factors, govern your pace of work, which is like say there are this climatic. Mar besi bag, I think 40% of the time hipini hokale halot bohibo nware. Borokhunor dinot euluke pothar loi jay. আকৌ তোমাৰ বিহুৰ আগে আগে পথাৰৰ পৰা ধান কাটিবলৈ যায়. So there's like solid 3 to 4 to 5 months which they have to dedicate to that practice, right? Because it's part of their culture, part of their lifestyle. এতিয়া মই যদি সিখিনি সময়ত তেওঁলোকক কওঁ নাই আপোনালোকে এইটো ডেডলাইন আছে, আপোনালোকে দিবই লাগিব, বাৰিষাৰ সময়ত বানপানী হয়, বহুতৰ ঘৰ মানে ঘৰৰ সিচুৱেচন বেয়া হয়, খুটা উঠি যায় পানী। So হেনেকুৱা সিচুৱেচনত মই যদি এটা মোৰ এটা আৰ্বিট্ৰাৰী ডেডলাইন ৰাখি যদি তেওঁলোকক ডিমান্ড কৰো, it's not only unfair to them, but it also is extremely insensitive to the cultural, setup. You're not doing justice to what is their identity in a way. So it's a difficult balance, and I'm still trying to understand how to, do my best to preserve that.
Story behind the name House of Noorie. Actually, in the call also yesterday, Vinny, I was telling, many people think that your name is Noorie. So many people asked me also, Ritu, is that girl is Noorie? No, she's Prerana. So can you just tell?
Yeah, a lot.
Tell us this, like why House of Noorie name? And
so I think I was just kind of looking for a name, what to call my work, and so I was, just like looking, I thought that, I want a name that basically means a ray of light, because, I started House of Noorie at a time when I was personally extremely disillusioned by the way things were shaping. And, even in my career, it was not going the way I thought it will. And there were certain expectations which were not getting met. And I was extremely, what do I say? I was confused. I was not sure whether I should make this leap of, leaving a job and starting something like this, especially when I knew nothing. So it was just like directly, it's like the fool card in tarot, like if you know tarot cards, there's this fool who basically makes jumps in from a cliff without knowing what's down beneath. So that was me. Like I was the fool, and so I was looking for a ray of light, and I don't know, I was just looking through different Google, they have these sites where they suggest beautiful names and all of that. Just like then I just fell asleep on one of those pages and this name just appeared. Maybe this is what is in my subconscious, like me looking for a ray of light and taking forward from the topic of identity. I'm just barging in, sorry. that plays a very important role in my work, because for me also, I think I have always personally kind of occupied liminal spaces, like more na ghar ka na ghat ka enekwa ta hodai feeling eta asile, like I was not too masculine, I was never too friendly, too strict, like I was always somewhere in the middle, and I always looked for boxes to fit in, and I never seemed to find any. So liminality, when I finally read about the theory of liminality, I was like, okay, this concept exists. There are people who are liminal. And it's not just a theory or theoretical concept of aesthetics, it's also a kind of life experience you inhabit at times. So I always felt that my textile work, even unintentionally, will somewhere kind of address that, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of ethics. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about the identity bit of, and also because I work so much with indigenous communities, and I want to highlight that, especially at a time when the whole dialogue and conversation around indigenous people is so important worldwide, and we have to somewhere get talking about it in Assam as well, being a state with huge diversity, and we have so much potential in terms of the kind of diversity of people and cultures we have. So yeah.
Thank you, Prerana. Thank you for sharing that. What do you mean by inclusive fashion?
Right.
How House of Noorie is taking up that?
Inclusive means that everybody gets a voice to say who they are. Inclusivity means that you're going to look at everyone with equity. I will not say equality because that's not a fair term. There has to be equity in the way you understand people, in the way you understand potential of people. Like when I talk about my weavers, if I'm expecting everybody to produce the same number of clothes for a certain, weaving cycle, it might be unfair. A weaver with a child will probably be able to put in less hours than a young weaver who is in her prime. So, equity gets addressed in all these little things, and you have to, these things become a part of everyday decisions, because you take all these decisions every day when you're interacting with the community. So for me, inclusivity is like that, to be conscious while making everyday decisions like this, which are fair to the maximum. It's not like I don't end up making mistakes. It's not like any of us can avoid making mistakes. We do, but I think inclusivity will mean that we have the humility and the courage to accept that and recognize the mistakes, learn a better way of doing it, and going ahead. And inclusivity will also mean that we treat all kinds of bodies in the same way, that we have the same kind of respect and adoration for our own bodies, for others' bodies, and understanding that the political is but an extension of the personal. And unless and until you make all these changes, unless and until you raise all these questions in your personal circle or in your personal life, they're not going to reflect on the larger polity. So, I think inclusivity is this and much more.
Yeah, thank you for that.